guys love coming to Windsor Gardens because, as I always say, you guys are my original constituents. You were my constituents when I was in the state legislature, and so all those folks have a special place in my heart. And I thought I'm glad you mentioned that I'm down to earth because I had this really beautiful suit and everything on for my meeting at the Colorado Business Roundtable earlier today, and I thought, I'm going to be with my friends at Windsor Gardens. I'm going to cool down a little bit, and I see you all had the same idea. So I thought what I would do is just give you a very brief report on what's going on in Washington, what you should be worried about and looking at, and then I want to take most of the time for the questions. So it's been, all I have to say. Joe, she brought me a glass of water. I'm sorry. Thank you. All I want to say is it has been a crazy, crazy year in Washington. In case you had not noticed, and I've been in Congress. This is my 15th term, so I've been there now 28 years. And the legislature before that, I was 12 when I got elected the first time. But in all my time, and I think frequently about everything that I've seen. Think about it. I mean, I was there the term after the Democrats lost the Congress for the first time in 40 years, and Newt Gingrich was the speaker. I was there September 11th. I was in my office on September 11th when the planes hit the World Trade Center. I was there when our economy almost collapsed over the banking scandal. And of course, I was in the House gallery on January 6th, along with Jason Crow, when we were the last people to be evacuated during the insurrection. So I've seen it a lot. I might write a book. I already wrote one book, and I had a good time doing that, but maybe someday when I leave, I might write another book about all this because it's just been crazy. Nothing comes close to the craziness of the last few months with Donald Trump getting reelected as president. And the thing I want to point out to you, because everybody keeps saying to me, what can the Democrats do about this? And I'll talk more about that later. What we can do about it is stand up, push back, speak out. And I know all of you have been, because every time there's a rally or a march, I see friends of mine there and friends of mine from this group. So those of us baby boomers, we still remember how, and we still like a good protest. But the thing I remind people is the public elected Donald Trump to be president, and they elected a majority in the U.S. House, even by 3 to 5 seats, the slimmest of majorities, and in the U.S. Senate. So they control all 3 branches of government. And the worst problem with that is that the Republican Party, the nationally and to an extent locally, has really become a cult. And they are so afraid that Donald Trump is going to recruit a primary opponent to run against them that they all just fall into line. And I'll talk to you about this big bad bill and some of the other things that they have done. But I'm actually, and most of you know this, I pride myself, being a Coloradoan, on working across the aisle and working with Republicans. All the major legislation I've always passed has been in a bipartisan way. I believe in that, and it's also a good way to pass good legislation. So I have a lot of Republican friends, and privately they will tell us that this is a disaster, and they're really upset. I've kind of quit putting up with that. When they start complaining to me, I say, well, you know what? You hold the power. You can do something about it, and you have to stop being complicit in this. And so because they do. So the first thing I will tell you, with the whole member Doge in the midst of time just a few months ago, with Doge and that whole raft of executive orders that Donald Trump passed, it was chaos and confusion from day one. Almost everything he did was illegal. And it was really, I'm trained as a lawyer, and I used to be a trial lawyer, and I've done a lot of constitutional work in my life. And I'll tell you, it was illegal because he was overstepping his constitutional duties, and he was also overstepping congressional authorizations. Article 1 of the Constitution, as you'll remember, is Congress. And so so everybody was absolutely beside themselves. I would tell people, I became a lawyer. I did not become a therapist, but maybe I should have gotten a psychology degree because it was very, very difficult in those days. My friends, my family, all my constituents, everybody just absolutely beside themselves. And I said, this is illegal. And what has happened, and once everybody sort of woke up and shook it off, they realized it was too. And there have now been over 300 lawsuits filed against these actions. And the most important thing is almost 200 of them, we have won injunctions in those cases, and we've stopped this illegal activity. So in the House, we formed a litigation task force, and I'm part of that task force. And what that task force does is it monitors and encourages lawsuits. And Colorado has been one of the leaders. Phil Weiser and the AG's office has been one of the leaders in the country on the lawsuits. And also, we are drafting up amicus brief in support of the lawsuits, and we're getting co-signers to do that. And so I'll give you one example. One of the executive orders they did stopped all of the research grants that were coming to research hospitals like Anschutz over at CU. And Anschutz is one of the top research institutions in the country. They just stopped the grants that had already been authorized by Congress. So there was a lawsuit filed, and guess what? An injunction was ordered, and the administration slow walked it, but that money is now coming back. And the other thing that happened is that after those 20-year-old kids over at Doge did all of these massive government layoffs, and they did it because they typed words into some kind of a search engine, and if the words that they deemed to be unacceptable came up, then they fired all those people. And that's how they nearly fired all of the people who do nuclear inspections of our nuclear weapons bases. They realized almost immediately that was a poor idea, and they hired them back. But one of the stories I've been telling about this, most of you know, I'm very, very active. One of my top priorities is healthcare policy, and this Congress, I'm the ranking Democrat. I like to call myself the chair in waiting of the health subcommittee in Congress, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. I got a call from some employees down at the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, and Doge had fired the entire lab of the researchers who research STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. And so they asked for a Zoom meeting with me. So I met with them. Here were all these researchers sitting in their living rooms, and they're like, this is terrible. We're doing all this research for the whole world into these terrible diseases, a lot of them in Africa and other places. And the thing we're the most worried about, they said, what are we going to do with the samples? And I'm like, the samples? This doesn't sound good. And they said, well, the disease samples, they have them all in freezers, like the one I have in my garage. And seriously, I've been down there and I've seen this. They said if they don't get protected, we're going to lose decades of research and advancement. So I wrote a letter And I said, you need to rehire these researchers. Unbelievably, they did. So I know. So this is a lot of places. The people who they fired were the people. I was talking to the air traffic controllers, not a group of people who you really want to let suffer, right? Particularly this summer, and they said that they laid off all of the people who do the clerical work, put their timesheets in, and do their schedules. And this is true across the government. They just don't have any idea what they're doing, and now they're desperately trying to rehire everybody. And so it's because of the pushback of citizens and because of the pushback of the members of Congress, we really have been able to start getting a lot of this reversed, but a lot of damage has been done. And that brings me to the big bad bill. This bill. I have never seen a worse piece of legislation in my entire career. It is so devastating because it cuts programs for people like us in this room and our families, and it does it in order to permanently extend the tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires. And it also adds $4 trillion to our debt and deficit even after these cuts. So it's just poor. It's really terrible public policy. A couple of things I'm really concerned about. I'm concerned about the cuts they did to Medicaid. They're saying, oh, well, we're just going to make able-bodied people work. But the thing is, all of the independent studies have shown that 93% of people who are on Medicaid either are working, some of them working several jobs, or they're disabled, or they're elderly, or they have some other exemption. And so for that very small number who you want to get working, what they're going to do is they're going to make everybody do these extremely burdensome paperwork requirements just at the time that they're cutting all the clerical employees, right? And in the two red states that tried to do this work requirement, they ended up throwing a lot of people off of Medicaid who were eligible for Medicaid, and it was so burdensome, they ended up reversing it. And so the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates that 15 million people will lose their health care from Medicaid, and also because the Republicans intend to not extend the tax credits that were given in the exchanges and the insurance exchanges. And so that's 15 million people. And I want to tell you, that's not 15 million deadbeats who are just collecting it. But in addition, if it really, they keep saying, well, we don't want waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm like, you know what? Neither do I. And if I ever find a line item of waste, fraud, and abuse, I will exit out immediately. The fact is, you don't have that much waste, fraud, and abuse. And if you did, you would eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse. It's not by the recipients, it's by the companies that are milking the Medicaid system for what it is. Some of you know all about this. And so that was the first devastating blow. The Colorado Hospital Association estimates that some rural hospitals, at this point it looks like 8 rural hospitals might go out of business. Everybody else's insurance is going to go up. And the Colorado, I don't know if you saw, the Division of Insurance estimated last week everybody's insurance premiums are going to go up 28% next year, except for in the rural areas where they're going to go up 38%. And so yesterday we had, you might have seen this on the news or in the newspaper, is we had a delegation, we had everybody in our delegation at the Chamber of Commerce on this panel discussion, and all the Democrats, we had these statistics. We're like, what are you going to do about this? These statistics are not something that Hakeem Jeffries and I came up with in a back room. These are by nonpartisan agencies and think tanks. And what they say is, well, we really think work is an important American value and stuff like that. They don't have any facts to back it up. And then when I said, they said, well, business really wants lower taxes. I said, well, I don't want to overtax people, but you're getting these tax cuts and our deficit is going to balloon, and that's going to weaken our economy, and that's going to weaken your bottom line. So you should be worried about that too. A couple of the other things that are in this big bad bill, of course, the SNAP food stamp benefits are way cut, and they were already low, $2 a day. I do not know why you would cut food for poor children just at a time when families are still suffering from high food costs. I think it's atrocious. And then the third thing, which is really an important thing in Colorado, they cut the renewable energy subsidies that are helping so many of our Colorado businesses succeed. And again, nonpartisan agencies have estimated that every Coloradoan's utilities prices are going to go up next year because of these. And so they did that. Then a couple of weeks later, they did the rescission bill. That was taking back money that had already been appropriated by Congress. That's where they defunded the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and international foreign aid. So not only are you going to have U.S. kids starving now, but you're going to have kids starving all around the world. I just think it's a terrible set of values, and I don't think and if you look at the polling, Donald Trump is falling and falling and falling because this is not an American value. So, one thing I will say is people ask me all the time, what are the Democrats doing? And I will tell you, we are fighting like hell every day. And one of the things that really angers me is that we have difficulty getting the press to cover like that. Like, for example, you guys all saw the press about the Doge cuts and everything else. How many of you saw real press about how all of this was very slowly being reversed? That's not in their press narrative. That's not in their press narrative. When they did the big bad bill, when they did it through my committee, because the Medicaid cuts came through my health committee, I'm the ranking Democrat in that committee, we fought that bill in my committee for 26 and a half hours straight. What does that mean? We sat in our seats in the committee room arguing against it, raising amendments against it. The very first amendment that we had to that bill was my amendment, because I'm the ranking Democrat. My amendment said this bill shall not go into effect until it's certified that no qualified individual will lose their Medicaid. And we debated that amendment for 4 hours, from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., because they tried to do this in the middle of the night, like they try to do everything in the middle of the night. And we were there that night and all the next day. Then when we came back to do it on the floor, same thing. We fought them in the Rules Committee. We fought them in the floor. And then when they did the final bill that came back from the Senate, you might recall it was during the 4th of July recess. People were on vacation. I was on vacation with my family, but there were people who were on delegations to Europe and every place else. The most poignant one was my colleague from California who had just had surgery because it was the recess, so he thought it'd be a good time to have surgery. He had to fly from California, and his wife had to fly with him so she could change his IVs on the airplane. And when we had that vote, again, after I think that was like 30 hours, every single Democrat showed up. And what that means, what that means when we show up, every single one of them, except for maybe one or two, has to vote. It calls them out. If we don't show up, it gives them a pass, because they know, Gabe Evans knows that this is not popular in his district, and he is not going to be able to withstand. He just keeps going into this, well, work is an American ethic kind of a thing. That's what he intends to say while his constituents are suffering. So we're putting all of them on record, and we're making them own these votes every day. And we're going to keep doing that. I like to tell people, when I was in college at Colorado College, I never did an all-nighter. I didn't start doing an all-nighter till I was in my 60s. So, there's that. But what we see coming down and I want to say, they didn't explicitly cut Medicare, but some of them want to cut Medicare, and we intend to continue to watch that like hawks, to be all over that. But also people who are dual eligibles, Medicare and Medicaid, if they're not careful, they may see their benefits drop. The other thing that's happened, and I'm sure some of you have seen this with Social Security and with the VA and with some of the agencies, because they fired all the people who are the caseworkers, it's really hard to get through. I mean, and so this is what this is Joe Middleton, who's standing right here. She's my chief of staff. So we have an incredible staff here in our Denver office, and they are here to help you with these agencies. So if you run into trouble, I'll tell you, I did this great big, most of you know about my 21st Century Cures bill that I did with Congressman Fred Upton, a Republican from Michigan. And Fred's retired now. He called me up one day. I don't know if I told you this. He called me up one day. He goes, Diana, my mom is trying to get her Social Security fixed, and she can't get an appointment. She's in Michigan. And he goes, can you help me out with that? I said, for you, yeah. For you, Fred, yes, I will. But for my constituents, you can call my Denver office. You can go online, and we, unlike many politicians, answer our phone every time somebody calls us. So I have lots of bills that I want to do. They've all been put on and most of them are bipartisan health care bills. They've been put on the back burner. I'm happy to talk to you about them, but I think now that there's the urgency of the moment, that's why you're all here and you want to hear this. So this is what I'm talking about. Shall we take some questions, CL?
Yeah, okay.
I got CL just as she wandered off. Okay. She's organized.
No.
What can you tell us about the possibility of some private detention facilities in Colorado being taken by ICE? We already have a private detention facility out in Aurora, the GEO facility. You probably saw the delegation, the Democrats in the delegation went out there the other day. And under the Constitution, we are allowed, with our congressional oversight authority, to show up at any federal facility to inspect it at any time. But the ICE has decided that we have to give them 24 hours notice. Or, I'm sorry, not 24 hours, 7 days notice. So Jason Crow, it's in Jason's district, he went out there couple of weeks ago, and he tried to go in there, and they refused to let him go in. So we decided, well, we'll ask for the 7 days, and we'll see what we see. And we got there the other day, and I will tell you, I told you I used to be a lawyer, and I was a public defender early in my career, and I also did a lot of prison and jail litigation for the ACLU. So I said this, it didn't really come off right when I said it, but I said, I've been in a lot of jails, and that's what I meant. But I tell you, I have never seen as clean a jail in my life. And we talked to a couple of the detainees there, and they said they had all been gotten up early that morning and made to clean it. The other thing that happened in the cell blocks, they have individual cells, and then there's a common area. They had all the people locked up because they were having count. So we couldn't see, they have a recreation room that's basically the size of a basketball court, has a basketball hoop at one end and a kind of a rudimentary weight machine at the other end, and they put 80 people in there at one time. But there was no one in there the day we were there. And the other thing that happened, it was unbelievable, but unfortunately, the senior management there just couldn't be there that day. And so the people who were talking to us had no knowledge of anything, including what their population count was that day. So I was glad that we went. And I got to visit with Jeanette Vizgara. Some of you know who she is. By the way, I had to get in advance, I had to get a release signed so that they would let me to see her. And that was, they're just making it as difficult as they can. But I have filed a bill in Congress, a private bill, which I rarely ever do, to help Jeanette stay in this country. I hope it will work because she's been a real champion. So that's a long description of
Detention centers.
yeah. Oh, okay. But today I saw in the Denver Post that they said they were doing another ICE center. I didn't hear them say that. Brittany said she heard them say that. I might have been visiting with Jeanette when they said that, so I'm not disputing that they did. I have no doubt that they intend to introduce, to have more centers. One of the things they did in this big bad bill was they really amped up the budget for ICE so that it is more than many militaries around the world. And I think it's un-American, and most people also think it's un-American. And also most people now realize, none of us wants violent criminals to be running around our streets, whether they're a citizen or a non-citizen. And so I think violent criminals should be arrested. That's not what they're doing. They've been given a quota of 3,000 people a day. So they're going over to the Home Depot lot where hardworking people are trying to get jobs. They're going to farms. They're going to construction sites. And it is really disgusting and outrageous. One thing that's in my committee's jurisdiction is the separation of families. Remember the last time Trump was president? We were the committee that did the investigations of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Those are the kids, and we're already all over that now because we're not going to let that happen again with these kids. So that's what's going on, and it's really frightening. Maybe it will lead to a recognition. Public opinion, I don't know if you've looked at these posts, public opinion has flipped on immigration just since Trump got elected. Now people understand the value of having migrants. And so I think that perhaps this can help lead, once the Democrats retake the Congress, I hope in 2026, I hope it can lead to comprehensive immigration reform. That's really what we need. Okay, enough of that. Does Trump have any legal authority to rewrite history when it comes to exhibits at the Smithsonian? Well, I think that's illegal too. And for one thing, it's really vague. And so I think people need to file lawsuits over that. He fired the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, who was fantastic. And I don't think he had the authority to do that either. That's the Library of Congress, and it's our research branch. I think people need to stand up to these excesses, and it's very authoritarian and frightening to see this attempted rewriting of history. And it's not just the Smithsonian; it's the universities that he's trying to get them to rewrite. It's everything. Okay. What are our protections against the current administration in keeping Social Security operating? Yeah, so Colleen says they slip in conversations and mention dismantling our safety net. And they would like nothing more than to dismantle Social Security. However, they know that their constituents care overwhelmingly about preserving Social Security. This is something everybody in this room paid into Social Security. It's not like it's a government giveaway. Everybody paid into it. And many of my constituents who I talk to, I wonder sometimes if these Republicans talk to their constituents, because many people I talk to, that is their sole source of income. They don't have a fancy, pension plan from their fancy employer. And so number one, Social Security is established by statute. And number two, it's overseen by Congress. So if they try to do something unilaterally, not only will it be politically devastating for them, it will be illegal and will file suit and then it'll be overturned. Okay, have you endorsed the call for an amendment that says corporations are not people and money is not speech? Yes, I have. I think that's that was a terrible opinion, and it really did flood our political system with dark money. One other thing, though, I will say, when we had the Congress the last time, we had a bill, H.R. 1, and H.R. 1 was a comprehensive campaign finance bill. And to show its importance to the Democrats, that's why we called it H.R. 1. And one of the biggest features of it was public funding for elections, which I strongly support. So, okay, yeah, these are about the Trump's takeover of D.C. Very authoritarian move. I agree, and I think it's crime. D.C. has always had a pretty bad crime rate, but it's been down 30%, and they're working on it. I do not think that it is legal or appropriate to put federal troops in to supplement local police forces unless it truly is an emergency. And I was very proud of my former colleague and friend Karen Bass, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, when she stood up against them doing it in Los Angeles. And that's sort of faded away too, didn't it? Trump is really good at performative stuff, and then it just sort of fades away. I don't know. I've been watching to see what Mayor Bowser does in D.C. because she has not been as strong in opposing this as I might have thought. But I'm here to tell you, the residents of D.C. are really, really mad. And so this is not going to bode well for Donald Trump or for these troops. Okay. Okay, so this question, they're both about what's happening in Gaza, and I'll tell you what it is. There's no words to describe the horror of what's going on in Gaza right now. And I have made a number of statements about it. You need to look at my website and you need to look at my social media. But I have now, the attack by Hamas against Israel was horrifying, and I fully supported Israel's right to defend itself and to fight against Hamas. But what Netanyahu has done now is beyond the pale. And the humanitarian crisis that he has now caused in Gaza is indefensible. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. The first thing is, in the fall, when we get back after Labor Day, we're going to have the appropriations bills on the floor. And I believe, because this happened in the committee, I'm not on the appropriations committee, but there was an amendment that said we are not going to give offensive weapons to Israel. And I intend to support that amendment. I support Israel as a nation, but I also support a nation of Palestine. I support a two-state solution. I always have. And then the second person is asking, how can the Democratic Party heal the internal split that the trauma of Gaza is causing? And I'll tell you frankly, I think it's been very challenging up until now. Now, to me, it's gone over the edge. To me, it's gone over the edge because of the crisis in Gaza with the children and everybody. But I think it was difficult earlier on because of the horrors of the attack on Israel. I actually some years ago visited those villages right there on the border of Gaza and met with those villagers who lived down there. And P.S. had extremely good relationships with historic, over many centuries, relationships with the Palestinians that lived in the area. So that was horrifying. But then now what Netanyahu appears to be doing for his own political career is unconscionable. And so I think that we all need to keep talking to each other, and everybody, it's like one thing, and Joe will tell you this, I have met with every group that has asked to meet with me from day one. So I have met with the conservative Jewish population I have here. I've met with the most liberal groups. I've met with everybody. And not only that, I said the same thing to all of them. I didn't have different messages for different people. And I think everybody has to be respectful of everybody else as we move through this terrible, terrible trauma. And I hope we can get it resolved. That's about all I can say about that. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like this question. Someone asked me this the other day. What do you think about blue states doing gerrymandering in response to the Texas attempts to do that? Well, you know what? I'm not gonna play this game with one hand tied behind my back, and I mean, it is just. I was watching CNN right after this happened, and I saw this Texas Republican, and he was talking to the reporter, and the reporter said, "Why do you feel it's necessary for Texas to redistrict in the middle of the cycle? What's happened since then? Because normally it's every 10 years after the census." And this legislator just said, because we have to keep our majority in the House so we can pass our agenda. I mean, they're not even like trying to come up with some argument. And Trump says the same thing. And so a couple of things about that. I know many of you probably voted for that ballot initiative that set up a nonpartisan commission in Colorado. That has not worked out too well for us. And I was one of very few politicians who opposed that. I opposed that amendment because I felt like it could allow people to create mischief, and lo, it happened. The Republicans secretly stacked the commission, and some of the people on the commission didn't even understand anything about politics or voting, and we ended. I don't think our maps are bad, and we're gonna. I think we'll take back the 8th in the next election, and then we'll have a 5-3 map. But, we might have been able to have a 6-2 map. We're not going to be able to change our map now because we can't get something on the ballot quickly enough to change it in Colorado. However, California and New York apparently can get it on the ballot quickly enough. And as far as I'm concerned, I talked to one of Gavin Newsom's senior aides today, and I said, you know what? I think they should do it. If and only if Texas and these other states go forward. The other thing I will say, though, is I think this whole attempt on Abbott's part may backfire because even though they say they're going to win 5 seats, what they're going to do is they're going to make their seats less solidly Republican, and in a year when Democrats look like they're going to be doing very well in the election, it could actually backfire against them. I have 2 colleagues who are on the Texas-Mexico border, Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar. These are two of the districts they're talking about making more Republican. The districts are already Republican, and Vicente and Henry win by a wide margin anyway. And in Vicente's district, the way they're talking about changing it, it puts in his hometown where he was born and grew up. So also, the other thing is, there are so many seats in the rest of the country that we think we will win because of the unpopularity of Donald Trump and his party. All the special elections that we have had since the presidential, all of them, the Democrats have way outperformed. And I will give you an example from last week. Last week in Rhode Island, they had a special election in a state Senate seat. And in November, the Democrat won that state Senate seat by 12 points. And I don't know what happened, he resigned or she resigned. And last week they had a special election for the seat, and the Democrat had a 56-point performance. So, if it goes like that, and I think some of these seats will go like that, I'm going to have my gavel back, and you're going to be calling me Madam Chairman again.
The rest of the questions are really about what can we do.
Okay.
So, take
Yeah.
a snap.
Okay. Do emails and postcards influence members of Congress? Yes, particularly if it's about an issue that's not the issue that everybody knows about. Frequently, somebody will raise an issue with me that I didn't even know about, and it helps me to understand those bills. One thing people don't realize, in Congress, there's no limit as to the number of bills you can introduce, like in the Colorado legislature. So I might not know. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a bill in Congress right now saying that ICE agents or any federal law enforcement agents should not be able should have to identify themselves and not be able to wear a face covering. That was a constituent that brought that to my attention, and when I found out about it, I signed on as a co-sponsor that very same day. So, it does. What specific actions are Dems taking to stop the slide towards autocracy? What can we do in these unusual times? I've talked about a lot of the things we're doing. One thing I want you to know, we are just as concerned is not the word. We are just as crazed about this as you are, and we are fighting every day in every way. When I told you about the markups we had of the big bad bill, I told you how everybody showed up. When they debated that bill for the last time when it came back from the Senate, they scheduled the bill for 1 hour of debate, 30 minutes per side, at about 3 a.m. So we don't have a lot of tools in the House rules, but one of the tools we have is that the Democratic leader is allowed, we call it the magic minute. He gets a minute yielded to him. He can talk as long as he wants. And Hakeem Jeffries, I hope some of you watched this. Hakeem got up and he talked for 8 hours. And unlike Kevin McCarthy, who talked for a long time before about like the decor in his office and stuff, Hakeem had notebooks full of letters from people who were going to be impacted by this bill, including people who were from the 8th Congressional District. And he was masterful. So we are doing that every day. In my committee, like before the big bad bill came up, we had a number of hearings, like we had a hearing on fentanyl in my committee. So we turned that into a hearing about how the budget cuts that the Republicans are going to do are going to stop funding for therapy and for treatment. And we asked all the Republican witnesses who were there, if we have these cuts, you're not going to be able to treat people for fentanyl, are you? And they're like, no, the Republican witnesses. So we're figuring out ways to do this every day. We had RFK Jr. in front of my subcommittee. I hope you saw. If go on, is it on our website, Joe? That video still. Yeah, you should go on there and look at my questioning of RFK Jr. It was, because I used to be a trial lawyer, as I said, so I had a lot of fun that day. But I've also put together a really crackerjack committee. AOC is on my committee now. I helped get her on there, and we have really solid members who just, and when we go back in the fall, when we have hearings about other topics that the Republicans want to talk, because we can't schedule hearings, right? They schedule all the hearings. So we're going to hijack those hearings too. Like, for example, if we have hearings about biomedical research, we're going to turn that into hearings about what Trump's proposed 40% cut to the National Institutes of Health would do to cancer research and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So we're fighting every day in this way. I like to tell people it's really the 3 C's. It's Congress, and I've talked a lot about what we're doing in Congress. It's the courts, and I talked a lot about the courts. One thing I will say about the courts is none of us are happy about what the Supreme Court has done. However, the Supreme Court, birthright citizenship is a good example of this. And I had a long talk. I'm sure you all know who Jamie Raskin is. He's my pal. We were impeachment managers together, and he's a law professor. So Jamie and I had a big conversation a week or two ago about this, and we agreed what the Supreme Court is doing, it's not ruling on the core issue, it's ruling on procedure. So does the court have the authority to stop these things because of one person's lawsuit and things like that? But they have, like on birthright citizenship, which is in our Constitution, they said that they said you can't stop deportation in the whole country based on one person's lawsuit. So the next day, they went in and filed a class action, and then they got that upheld. So the courts have held. It's been painful, but it has happened. And then the third and the most important thing for this group is citizens. And what you need to do is show up every day, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, and I assume, since this is the Democratic Club, you're all Democrats. We need to stop this narrative that is only helping the Republicans, that the Democrats aren't doing anything, because we're all fighting. And I'm sure some of you did too. I had some friends who moved to Portugal because they said, we just don't know our country anymore. I said, you know what? Good for you. Hope you enjoy it. I intend to stay here and fight. And I said, when you come back to visit, you can come see me in jail. But I really don't want to go to jail. I realized this last night, actually. Someone said to me, are you willing to go to jail? I said, yeah, if it would help. But the problem is, if I went to jail, that would be one less vote we had on the floor. I have to show up to vote. So that's how you can help, is to let people know you talked to me, and I said we are doing everything humanly possible, and you are too. And writing letters, making phone calls, going to protests, signing up. Also, I don't know what your financial ability is, but I had a little bit of money left over this month, so I'm giving money to Planned Parenthood and to Colorado Public Radio and to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And that's something else you can do to help too with all of this. And also food banks, because food security is so key. And I've been going to the food banks to talk about that. We need to support our neighbors. And then if you know people in your neighborhoods or wherever who might need a little help, take them over a cat. It starts with our community and goes up, the 3 C's. So that's what we can do. All right, maybe one more question. See y'all. There's more.
Say, we have a protest every month.
I know.
Outside
You
on
go
the-
stand. I know. I've seen it. You go stand out there on the street. I love it so much. Actually,
September 1, 4 o'clock.
September 1.
September 1, 4 o'clock, billionaires versus workers.
Okay. Well, just let us know. We'll come protest with you one day. Okay. Shirley, I have to answer Shirley's question because Shirley and I have Shirley Schley, we've fought so many battles together over the years. And our kids were friends when they were little, or your grandkids and my kids. And she says, how will we recover? We will recover because we're Americans and we're tough and we're not going to give away our country. That's how we're going to recover, Shirley. I answered this. What can Democrats do to rein in the Trumplicans? I like that. When they take back control of Congress, I have one word: oversight. We are going to, when we take control of Congress, and we're going to take the House in 26, and I think we have a good chance at the Senate. I don't know if you saw my pal Sherrod Brown is going to run in Ohio again for the Senate. He's so great. But we have the power of subpoena, and we're going to haul these people all in, and we're going to make them testify under oath about the damage that they've done, and we're going to expose it all to the American people. And then someone else asked, what is the Democrats' agenda? And you all know our agenda. Our agenda is this, and you've seen it whenever we've had a Democrat in the White House and a Democratic Congress. We believe every American should have the ability to have a good education and to be able to get a good job with a good pay and good health insurance. They should be able to have a clean and hospitable place to live. And they should be able to have a life that's a better life than their parents, every single American. And then they should be able to retire with dignity and to live out the rest of their life in that way. That is our core American value. And we believe that should be the value for every American, not just the ultra rich and the corporations. And if you, I know we all do, believe that in our soul, then the policies emanate from that. And so don't you worry, we're gonna have plenty of policies to talk about. We already have some, but right now, what we're doing is fighting against the atrocities of the Trump administration and working to secure our democracy, and we will win because we're Americans. Thank you guys, thanks for what you do.